Hello, and welcome to our next presentation. On behalf of the MIT CDOIQ Virtual Symposium, we'd like to thank all of our sponsors who have continued to support the symposium during this very challenging year. Before we thank our partners, we'd like to ask that sometime during the symposium's breaks that you visit our partners' virtual booths. You can also visit the Content Hub on the MIT CDOIQ website for some great partner resources. We'd like to thank the following partners: Deloitte, Informatica, Privacy Analytics, DAWEX, Fusion Alliance, KPMG, Sandal Consultants, Tamer, Elation, Ali Data, Big ID, Boomi, Caserta, Citizen, Data Kitchen, Garage, Wakira, Pylog, Click, ThoughtSpot, Eckerson, Global IDs, Snowflake, Starburst. And as I said, please make every effort to visit our partners, use the virtual passport, because without them and our partner support, the symposium could not be held. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to our second keynote session, the panel on data harmonization, how data can unlock business agility. I'm going to pass it over to your moderator, Sachin, Managing Director from Deloitte. Sachin.
Thank you, Robert. What an honor and pleasure it has been to be associated with this event from MIT over the last 3 years. My name is Sachin Khairnar. I'm a Managing Director, partner from Deloitte Consulting. I lead our data analytics and artificial intelligence services for technology industry clients, and also co-lead our Chief Data Officer program with Juan, Tello, who's on the panel as well. With me, I have an esteemed panel today from Dell, Anthem, as well as my colleague from Deloitte, Juan. What we are going to cover today is really the focus around enabling business agility through better usage and harmonization of data. And my clients and my colleague have stories to share and how they've approached it, what lessons they've learned. Before we get into the dialogue, what I would like to ask each panel member to introduce themselves, set a broad context on their organization, how they are structured, what initiatives they are undertaking, so that the audience has the context behind their responses when we get into the Q&A. I would like to ask Adi Ramachandran from Dell to start. Adi.
Hey everyone, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. My name's Aditya, Adi Ramachandran. I work for Dell Technologies, and I head up the data analytics and automation function for Dell's supply chain organization. So what this organization is essentially a consolidation of all our investments in the area of digital and advanced analytics. So we do a few things. We have got a set of strategy folks that actually drive and define what our transformation agenda looks like. We have got enablement specialists that essentially bring new technologies, bring new programs to life, including dealing with the change management implications. We have got a data governance organization that essentially works as the business data stewards for all of our data assets. And then we have got an advanced analytics organization that is comprised of data engineers, data scientists, and application developers that are essentially building rapid prototypes, deploying them into production, industrializing them, and then scaling them out. All four of these functions working hand in hand with our counterparts in the enterprise IT function. For us, I think really the impetus, so to speak, for business agility and our digital transformation as a whole comes down to three core principles, right? It starts out with we believe that we need to free up our capacity from menial, low value added tasks, meaning we need to automate aggressively where we can and get all of that inefficiency out of our system. We need to make sure that we have full transparency and visibility into what our supply chain is doing. Not just the ability to observe our supply chain, but also have the supply chain talk back to us in terms of generating insights, both within our Dell supply chain and our extended supply chain with our partners. And then third, around using our advanced analytics teams and our capabilities to actually bring models into production, actually not have them be laboratory experiments, but instead have them be a working, functioning part of our ecosystem. So to us, these three foundational pillars essentially drive our entire transformation agenda, right? And it's the bedrock of what we want to do with our digital transformation. It comes down ultimately to wanting to make faster decisions better and being able to serve our customers with much more precision and ability to define success. So that's a nutshell of what we do as an organization. Sachin, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Adi. Ashok, I would like you to go next and share the context.
Yeah. Thank you. So Ashok Chennuru, I work for Anthem. It's a large managed care health insurer. So we serve 42 million lives with on the core insurance product, and we also touch close to 90 million lives with different healthcare services. So I'm the Chief Data and Analytics Officer for the company, and so as part of that, I am accountable for my team is, like all aspects of data management, including the data infrastructure, the whole, cloud enablement, data quality, data governance, like data literacy, data as a strategic asset, and on the analytics side, building the, the foundation, to serve and analytic applications to serve our internal constituents, which are our call center, our care management team, and our employers, who buy the insurance products from us, and our financial actuarial functions. So across all lines of business, and also our external constituents, which would be the government business like Medicare and Medicaid, and our large employers and our local markets where we offer, products to individuals through the Obamacare ACA, products, Accountable Care Act, and other, local small groups. So the key focus for us is, when you have, data for, 80 million lives, last year we embarked on, digital first AI driven, insights driven organization, where, how we could leverage data to empower, our, different constituents, and the focus being, currently with the COVID, pandemic, where, being able to collaborate with our, the physicians and hospitals to help the COVID members, who are positive or who get admitted in a hospital, providing the right data, to the physicians at the point of care, or when the members get discharged, how to help them navigate through post-discharge care, or right now return to work, where are the COVID hotspots? We combine a lot of external data. It's both structured and unstructured data to help with, where are the COVID hotspots? Where are the, the sites where you could get vaccinations? Or even, testing, if you will, right? So related to COVID. So they're all aspects of providing insights, at the right, point of care, if you will. Right. So the foundation for everything we do, is primarily driven, through what, how we leverage our claims data, and how we have embarked on, we started this journey of, getting medical records data, from all the hospitals and providers across the country, and building that longitudinal view of each member. And what that helps us is, being able to provide, the information, that, all the different constituents, whether it's the employers, on where the opportunities are, what you can do, to really help the member, providing them the right options, so we can help them navigate through a complex healthcare, ecosystem. From a technology perspective, we have like 80% of our data in the cloud. And in the last couple of years, we have a fairly, built a fairly robust AI, data science team. We have close to 350 data scientists, who are, turning this data into actionable, insights and also predictions, and focusing on key areas like, fraud, waste, and abuse, or, disease progression, or even, providing, the right service, as, the care models move from physical care to virtual care to telemedicine, how do we provide the right data and insights so we can provide the best experience for our consumers. So, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you, Sachin.
Thank you, Ashok. That was great. Juan?
Hey, Sachin, and thank you for the opportunity of sharing our internal perspective. I serve as Deloitte Consulting's UF Chief Data Officer. And as part of that, I'm responsible for our overall data agenda, which includes both the strategy and the formation of how we as a business leverage data into the execution and operations of our organization. What I'd like to sort of share, I mean, we're obviously a global professional service firm. So for us, we're in the business of serving our clients like Dell, like Anthem, and ensuring that we are always leading from the front. And so our agenda is really architected under four major principles or objectives. The first one is to safeguard trust. And that relates to, our clients' data, our people data, the compliance and regulatory requirements that are put around data. And the second one is around creating and capturing efficiencies. How are we creating data? How are we managing data? How are we using data? And can we take out some of the usual work that comes with that out of the system so that we can become a lot more effective? Our third priority is really around creating insights and value out of that data. And this one really has, I would say, a sort of twofold objective to it. One is internal, in terms of how we run and manage our business with better data, but also externally in regards to how we are using that data and that insights to better provide services to our clients. And our fourth objective is around fostering an insights-driven culture. And that's kind of the background as it relates to our view and our position around data and how we're helping change our professional service organization. And what's really important, I think, between those four objectives and the topic around data harmonization and business agility is, in order for us to really move the needle around those four goals and those four objectives, the first thing is we need to connect our data strategy or our data ambitions to our business strategy and our business ambitions. And where flexibility or agility starts to come in is in our ability to dial each of those four objectives up and down as needed to support some of those business strategies and business objectives. And they're not mutually exclusive and they're not sequential. And I would say that's been one of our biggest learnings as we've sort of matured our way through our own data journey, is having these four objectives, but ensuring that we are flexing and adjusting each of those objectives really to move, on our broader business goals and strategies. I think it's hard to think about our business strategies or business opportunities, sort of before the pandemic and after the pandemic. It's hard not to kind of work that into this dialogue. But, I think for us, the connectivity between data strategy and our business strategy, I would say was always there. What this sort of new market condition has done for us is really focused in on some of those strategies that I would say we're already on the docket, if you will. Strategies like future of work. How are we modernizing, sort of the new digital connections that we as employees have with our workplace? How are we thinking about new talent models? And as you start unpacking all those different strategies, data is really at the heart of that. And so we've always been connected to, strategies like future of work. But what has happened, over the last 3-6 months has really been more about focusing and really sharpening the goals and objectives and how to best use data to enable those. So that's what I would share, Sachin, as a sort of starting point in regards to, our journey as it relates to data, and really looking forward to participating in this panel.
Great. Thank you, Adi, Ashok, and Juan for the great context. And that's a nice setup for us to get into our next section of this discussion, which is really, I'll ask some curated questions to each of you, and we'll go from there. For the audience, I think you have a chat window to submit your questions. We'll address the audience questions in the last 10 minutes of this session. So Ashok and Juan, you've nicely summarized how your current organizational response to the current and upcoming market conditions, and how you are putting data at the center and at the heart of it. Let me ask a question to Adi. Adi, Dell Technologies is a edge to cloud technology enabler where innovation with speed is the mantra, as I know. How have you approached data harmonization, and what's the specific link to the business objectives in your context?
Sure. So I'll address the first part first, right? There's two different aspects in which I'd answer that question. Number one is the approach that we are taking to data harmonization, right? There's two approaches we could have taken. One would have been to get all of our data assets into a central harmonized or canonical data lake, and then start to find use cases that could rely on that data. The other extreme was an approach that was entirely use case driven, that basically says, if you have a use case, go deliver the data to that use case. So what we have done is something that's somewhere in the middle. We have an approach to build a canonical data model, so to speak, for all our supply chain data assets. And we are turning on those individual models, those individual assets in sequence of priority of a set of use cases. I could talk about a little bit more about those use cases if there's interest, but the net of it is we are basically letting the use cases drive the priority, but in building the data, the harmonized data layer for us, we're actually using the principles of building a canonical model first before delivering the data to the use case. The second piece would be the technology question, right? For us, it's very much a Dell on Dell question, right? Where we can and where our technology stack allows, we use the Dell on Dell product stack. For example, my data infrastructure is a PowerMax NVMe based storage array that has Greenplum databases and Hadoop running on top of it, and that's the core data set that we use, or core asset that we use in our data platform. So that, I think, Sachin, addresses the part one of your question, right?
Yeah.
Part two is how does that link to business agility, right? I think I mentioned in my intro that for us, our transformation or our digital strategy is essentially driven by the premise of being able to make better decisions faster. Let me make that a little bit more real, right? The important pieces of the puzzle that we are working on right now is our demand-supply equation. So we first and foremost recognize that we need to make good commitments to our customers, and then in order to meet those commitments, we need to make sure we have the right parts in the right place at the right time. In doing so, in historical context, before we started down this journey of data harmonization, we would essentially, as an organization, be spending a week to 2 weeks basically trying to agree on what the data tells us, what's the common data source that all of us are going to agree on. And to us, that was essentially not scaling. That's not an approach that can scale. And as you look to rely more and more on your data to start to generate intelligent insights and actually in some cases drive direct decisions, you can't rely on cottage industries of data silos. You have to actually start to connect all the pieces together. So to us, the real value for this data harmonization is we see as a necessary condition for our continued excellence in the supply chain. You know Dell, right? We have sort of been known for our supply chain excellence, but what we have come to realize is that if we need to continue to innovate, if we need to continue to be good at our supply chain, we'll need to start reimagining how our processes work. And data harmonization is core and central to that because we believe it reduces the time to value for us in the long term.
Great. Thanks, Adi. So data harmonization for the future of supply chain. That's great. Ashok, can you, I mean, in your intro, you mentioned the specific link in current pandemic from data perspective with physician and patient data sharing, etc. Can you share a little bit about the approach you have taken or Anthem as an organization taken in this specific area?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sachin. So two key themes, the current pandemic has, really, lifted the value of telehealth, and we have seen in some cases almost across the country, 41,000% increase in telehealth compared to last year as, patients or members didn't have, the opportunity to have this, physical visits in the provider offices. So there, in order to provide the best experience, data was the core theme, data and insights in terms of making sure that for the physician seeing the patient, giving him or her the longitudinal view of, telling them everything they need to know to make that, virtual care visit, as, comprehensive as possible, right? So, and not just for office visits, but also new type of, digital, AI-driven, tools for, managing your back pain or your diabetes management, and the reimbursement policies from the government, and the insurers are also helped in terms of pushing more, digital tools, that are primarily driven by, data and insights. So that's one key theme. The other key theme is, how do we help the members, who are, who have the symptoms, so we have built an AI symptom checker, so they don't have to call a physician. They can start with an app, and based on entering the information, provide, certain, recommendations. So then, and that would automatically do a televisit, to their physician as well. So there are some tools to help with, symptom checking. And then, if they feel that they have the symptoms, the next logical thing is, helping them with providing the right testing center. So where they could, again, data in action here, which is the closest where there are openings, so they could get tested. And if they get tested, the next, and if they turn positive, helping them with navigating through the care, and traditionally we used to rely on just, claims data, to know if a member of ours got admitted into a hospital, and that sometimes could take up to 6 weeks. So what we did, and this is where power of data came into action, is we started to build these pipes. Luckily, we invested with them in them last year. So in New York, back in March, April, when there was a big, a rapid increase on COVID members, we were able to get the information when of our members got admitted, or or was in a ICU or was on a ventilator, and we had our care managers trying to support or even helping them to tell this is what this member has if they have diabetes because for COVID the treatments, very different depending on what other comorbid conditions they had. If they had diabetes, or if they had like CHF, coronary heart, diseases, etc. So we were able to provide that insights, not only leveraging the data they give us, in terms of when a member was admitted or hospitalized, but also leveraging, what we could do with the data and what kind of insights we could share back with them, right? And then, when a member gets discharged from the hospital, we notify their, their primary care physician and provide them all the information and help them with post-discharge care, right? So these are two examples of how, data-driven, insights, which are powered by AI, where we were able to, support our, members.
Great, thank you. Ashok, you mentioned data-driven, insight-driven. It's interesting angle and priority. I mean, Deloitte conducts AI analytics and AI survey. So we've been conducting it for the last 3 years. And the most common theme has been for organizations to either become insight-driven or insight-first in certain cases. Culture has been the number one impediment or an accelerator. So let me ask this question to Adi specifically. How are you addressing cultural aspect, not just managing the change, but broader cultural aspect in the current business environment while driving data harmonization?
Well, I think that particular dimension is best addressed by my analytics organization and what we've been doing over the past year and a half, right? I think a couple of years ago, when we brought this organization that I now lead together, what we realized was we had a lot of, call it ivory tower for lack of a better word, but essentially you had projects that were perpetually in pilot mode, right? And what started to happen was, as a result of that, because it was always in pilot mode, nothing ever got through to production. And so we had to essentially take a deployment first approach to things, where you're actually starting to bring things to market faster, where you're starting to actually industrialize your products a lot faster. And that was thing number one for us, was in terms of getting more products out the door. So we went from 0 to half a dozen to a couple of dozen models now that are in production over the last couple of years. So that's piece number one. What that did was essentially that eliminated the latent demand, so to speak, for I want something like, imagine somebody in the supply chain asking the question of, I want something that can give me this insight, right? It sort of eliminated that latent demand. Now what we are doing is we are starting to get into the space of, let's push that envelope, right? If somebody is asking for a report, or if somebody is looking for a visualization, instead ask the question of, what business problem are you trying to solve? And it's working with our partners in each of the individual functions, either in planning or in procurement or in logistics, and sort of going that extra mile to say, what is it that we're actually trying to solve for over here, rather than simply taking what's given or stated as a business problem and trying to solve that specific problem, is actually what's proved to be the biggest change for us in the last few months. Now, that movie hasn't ended yet, so I'll tell you how it goes maybe in a couple of years, Sachin. But at least early results to me seemed really promising. And I think what it's starting to drive within our organization and in the broader supply chain is a recognition that you got to not state the solution, but instead state the true problem that you're facing in order to find out what you can go to. But look, change management is the hardest part, right? Is the culture of the organization and the way that an organization adapts to external stimuli essentially is one of the biggest differentiators for how fast you can make progress. I absolutely agree with that assessment from the survey.
Good, thank you, Adi. As leaders and specialists in this space, I think we all recognize that harmonizing data delivering solution is a critical but not only part of the equation to achieve business agility. Having the talent not just the talent that delivers, but the talent that adopts and learns from it, knows how to ask, what questions to ask, etc. So that's more of a talent availability. I think Ashok mentioned data literacy problem as well. So Ashok, let me address this question to you, since you mentioned data literacy specifically. How are you addressing the talent aspect of the data harmonization and analytics talent, both from delivery and consumption perspective?
Yeah, great question, Sachin. So from a delivery standpoint, or at least from internal talent, we've been fortunate enough, we started on this journey to really transform our team, from being more, like ETL specific or a particular BI tool specific to be more about, AI, cloud skills, and even getting some, folks who understand the problem we are trying to solve. So for example, when we are servicing our large employers, rather than trying to focus on, here is the data and the reports or dashboards that we are providing, what is the core business problem we are trying to support? So the core business problem is, we want to keep the employees productive and healthy, right? So healthy employees are more productive, right? So then around the themes of that, then how do data and insights, help serve that purpose, right? So if you approach it that way, like where you have business savvy, data savvy resources, with, certain core technology, skills, which are hands-on, we were able to transform the workforce. We still have some work to do, but we definitely have a head start on that, right? So that's one aspect, right? Number two is so you can build great insights, but if you don't integrate those insights, whether they're AI driven, into the right workflow, and train the folks to make sure and you get that continuous feedback of leveraging that, then you can have great insights, but the value won't be driven, so we always focus on the usability aspect, in terms of, that's where data literacy comes in, or even more than data literacy, it's insights, and training the folks, but more importantly, making sure they don't have to toggle between 4 different applications. And this applies both to our internal constituents, but also our, external constituents who are our employers, our physicians, health systems, our government entities, etc. How do we simplify this and integrate into their, day-to-day workflow, right? So, and it's a continuous loop. We don't get it right, day one, and we have, hired a lot of talent, who focus on usability, and we get them involved, early in the process.
Great. Thank you, Ashok. That was insightful. Juan, you also mentioned new or evolved talent models. We are looking at it from Deloitte perspective. Can you share your perspective on this topic?
Sure, absolutely. I think I'll start first with maybe sharing a little bit around how, and I'll sort of build, I think, on what Adi mentioned around supply and demand. And you think about our business, we're in the professional services business. And so having a good connected data, a data harmonized view between our supply and demand is absolutely critical. And one of the things that has happened in sort of today's world is, I think, the heightened not only interest, but appreciation for having that connectivity between supply and demand has created a cultural awareness on the importance that everyone, all of our employees have in their role as a steward of data, okay? And that has been, I think, a very, very important shift that we've seen, one, make progress around, the importance of culture and sort of becoming a more, data-driven organization or increasing our data literacy. But I think building on that, Sachin, to answer your question specifically, one, the awareness, I think, has begun in our organization. Everyone understands their role in curating and stewarding good information, specifically as it goes back to business agility specifically as it goes to connecting supply and demand, right? So I think that for us as an organization has really been the catalyst to move the needle. Now, as it relates to talent, what does that then mean for all of us as professionals in this organization? Our view is very much consistent with, I think, what Ashok was mentioning. It is absolutely multidisciplinary. I think the notion, the concept of, there is one skill or one profile that is required to be successful, to be more, data-driven, it is not correct. You need to have experience in strategy. You need to have experience in a business area or function. You need to have experience with technology. You need to be able to have experience with sort of data analysis. And so when you start unpacking all these various dimensions, you can quickly understand and realize why it's a bit of a challenge for organizations, and including ours, to really move the needle around what the future talent model of a data organization really needs to look like. And so I think, for us is one, recognizing that it's not a sort of one size fits all. There are different types of disciplines that need to come together to really form sort of what I call the data professional of the future. And we are absolutely embarking on efforts around that to ensure that we are bringing all those disciplines, all those experiences, developing a curriculum to mentor and grow our people with that sort of diverse set of skills and experience, because I think ultimately that is what's going to allow us to really be successful, both internally in how we run our business, leveraging and using data, but also externally in how we provide that same level of service to our clients.
Great. Thanks, Juan. Thanks for sharing those insights. Ashok, let me come back to you on the aspect of data harmonization that you mentioned, which includes the data about physicians to a certain extent. You mentioned 40 or 80 million lives, basically citizens, which means immense concerns and considerations around privacy of that data. How are you including privacy by design, or how are you managing privacy aspects in the data management initiatives you're taking, and how you're delivering those insights?
Yeah, great question, Sachin. So data privacy, data security, compliance are, like our key tenets, so a member consent, is critical. Data use agreements, and part of the reason why they have centralized a lot of those functions, within my organization. Obviously, we do work with a lot of the, our legal, teams, our compliance teams, our info security teams, so we have good traceability on, the data we get, and what can we do with the data, what cannot we do. And the same thing when we share the data to the third parties, like what kind of consent should we have? So those kind of policies are fairly well established, and but where we do see some concerns is bias, as we get some sensitive data, and as we come up with new pricing or even declining claims or or prior authorization requests, we are very sensitive in terms of making sure that there is no bias, and we are constantly looking at ways where we are proactively trying to mitigate that versus, trying to react when, we have an issue, right? So the key themes are, it's a foundational, we also make sure as we put data in the cloud, it's tokenized, we get the consent, because, or even when there is offshore access, certain, states, are very particular about, offshore access of data, and since, it's a global economy now, as far as resources working, we make sure those are, well established, like from a, data access. So the key themes are, privacy, data access, compliance, data use agreements, and end of the day, even if we share data to a third party, and if they have an issue with a privacy violation or a data breach, we are still held accountable in terms of the data coming from the members, right? Or from our employers who are the safeguards, right? So very much foundational and part of everything we do.
All right, great. Thank you, Ashok. I'll take us back to the Deloitte AI survey I mentioned earlier. One of the recent findings from our third survey was many organizations, especially those who have moved beyond experimentation and are scaling AI for business purposes, have also started to use the spectrum of AI techniques for management and harmonization of data. So let me ask Adi, how, if at all, you are applying AI in management of data in supply chain or harmonization of data in supply chain, and what benefits you're expecting from that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to be very honest, I think we've got miles to go in this journey, right? So I think we're just getting started, but very recently we actually have gone productionalized, essentially, an ML model that allows us to classify different parts that sit within our ecosystem. That's actually allowing us to significantly improve our classification rate and our ability to attribute parts in our supply chain pretty effectively. I think what's key, right, is in some of this is to actually start out with those design principles that say, I'm going to take approach X and I'm going to find every opportunity I have to actually use AI in my data harmonization and data governance efforts. And that sort of gives that impetus to start to reimagine things that historically you've always thought of data stewardship as somebody physically actually making sure that a data set is clean. But when you start to ask the question of, well, what if we reimagined it? What if we reframed what we wanted that to look like? What can we go do? And that started to now result in opportunities for us and Sachin, I think that's one of the places that will continue to be a journey and a focus area for us. Because if you think about the data assets that we are trying to canonize and harmonize, right? Even when and I think I'd seen this as a question somewhere, is when you look at all the assets, there's just so much out there. How do you draw the line on what you harmonize? Well, in our case, even if you take just the critical data elements, that still results in needing an army of data stewards to go manage it. And that model essentially doesn't scale very well and results in decay over time. So the only way in my mind to go forward is to actually start to use some of the technology available to us to make sure that we keep our data clean generation over generation and don't experience that drift that you would normally see.
Great. Thanks, Adi. Thanks for the insights. Ashok, what would you add to that? You're on mute, Ashok.
Sorry.
No worries.
Thank you. So I would say, for us, harmonizing data and getting all the stakeholders, aligned is very foundational. And as we move data to the cloud, making sure that, because we have to move, our workloads, which are predominantly on-prem now, we have to move them to the cloud, and moving them to the cloud comes with, a certain set of risks that we didn't face before, right? So making sure the whole enterprise, is bought into that model is going to be foundational.
Great, thank you. I think as all of us as individuals and organizations start to recover and hopefully soon recover from this pandemic and the global business environment, what I would like to hear maybe from Juan, starting with you, is what's next in terms of the data journey driving data agenda for Deloitte?
Yeah, and I'd like to just add a little bit. I was hoping you asked me a follow-up question.
Okay, please go. Go ahead.
Because I clearly have opinions on it. So yeah. So I mean, I absolutely, just to maybe be a little bit more bold on what both Ashok and Adi said. We all recognize the volume of data has exponentially grown. And I would say and you know, leading by example, right? We are absolutely leveraging the power of artificial intelligence to manage the foundation. We don't have enough people. If we had enough people, they wouldn't have all the right data expertise, right? We just sort of talked about what it really takes to be, you know, a data professional in today's world. And so artificial intelligence for us in this space, in regards to, you know, Adi framed it as a data steward, I think that's a great lens to look at it. If we think about a cognitive data steward, what are the, you know, roles and responsibilities that you would assign to that data steward to either, you know, manage data, look at data quality issues? That is really the only way we can get our arms around ensuring that we have the right data to make the right decisions. And so thank you for asking me that question, Sachin. But no, I mean, I think as it relates to, you know, where we're going in our journey, and it's really a build on I think, you know, our artificial intelligence, our AI journey. We've made some significant investments to continue to modernize our core as it relates to AI, both in how we perform our work internally, as well as how we perform our services externally. And so the need to standardize that is critical. And as part of standardizing, that does mean bringing more data into sort of the way we service our clients, but also automating that service, which also requires data. And then lastly, I would say it's about the innovation, the things that the white space that we aren't quite thinking about, or that you know, we haven't quite defined our own point of view on. And so this is absolutely a journey. And this is kind of maybe tying it back to agility and how it all comes together. You know, I would say these are all opportunities for us that we are dialing up and down. We're being agile as it relates to market conditions, the demand that we're seeing, and our own supply equation in the market. And we're absolutely empowering all that with data and AI.
Great, thanks, Juan. Let me pick up a question from audience. Maybe we can build upon your comment on that. As professional services organization, how, as part of the evolution in this journey, how are you balancing the internal data needs and clients' data needs and driving the equation, right?
It's hard. But I think it becomes, you know, honestly, it's about prioritizing. And when you can find the connection between those two, that's where I'd say you sort of get the 10x effect. And one example is in how we purchase, manage, and share third-party data. Obviously, you know, we use that to drive insights in how we're running our business. We use some of that third-party data in how we serve our clients and providing additional insights and value. We were doing that not so great. And so looking at that one opportunity and that one business, you know, sort of goal collectively on, hey, how are we going to do this better internally? Stop, you know, buying data more than we need, getting better deals as it relates to, you know, a sort of larger purchasing volume, but also ensuring that we're sharing that across all of our different business offerings was important. And so, you know, there is no simple black, white, it's internal versus external. I think my position and the way I've sort of managed between those two overarching goals has really been in finding the connectivity and the alignment if and when possible.
All right. Thank you. Adi, let me come back to you now. Maybe since you mentioned you have a couple of years left in the journey, can you share what are you looking forward to in those next couple of years? And if there is any lesson you want to share with audience, maybe part A and part B of the questions, what would you want audience to kind of take away as well? So journey, future looking journey, as well as the lesson.
Sure. I think the events of the last 5 or 6 months have only validated the direction that we are going in, right? So to me, I think over the next couple of years, it's really a question of how do we get far more efficient in driving to the end of the rainbow, so to speak, and how do we get really shave a few months off in terms of getting to that endpoint, right? That would be like what happens in what changes in terms of our roadmap. Over the next couple of years, here's what I anticipate, right? I anticipate that as we continue to build out our canonical model or our harmonized model, we get to a point where we're sort of 90% there, and we're actually starting to really leverage the entire ecosystem in an end-to-end fashion, and we're starting to generate all of the insights that we hope that we would. So think of things like a self-healing system that actually is able to reference issues that pop up in data and actually go fix it itself, right? That's the nirvana state that I'd like to get to, and I'm hoping we get there in the next couple of years. Could you remind me what the second part of your question was?
Any lesson you would like to share with the
Sure.
audience?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I would talk about, right, is as we went down this journey, it's the recognition that if you're a person that's sitting in a business function, be it supply chain or be it product engineering, whatever that function might be, right? Data governance and making sure that your data remains clean is not IT's job. It's IT along with business, and a business-led data governance program. It's absolutely essential. Data harmonization program that the business has an equal hand in is absolutely essential to making joint progress. What we have seen over the last year and a half, 2 years, has given us enough data points that what we are doing in the Dell supply chain, we are actually extending that out to all of Dell Technologies, where we're saying you need equal partnership. You need both hands in order to make real progress in this space. And that's probably the biggest piece of advice I would give, knowing full well that there are lots of these dynamics, right, of us versus them, or should somebody go out and do it. I think the biggest learning for us was just go down that journey together. Whether you're a business function or an enterprise function, it shouldn't really matter. The journey together is gets you there faster.
Yeah, that's music to my ears, especially since I practice in the technology industry. Ashok, what would you add in terms of the lesson or key takeaway for the audience?
Yeah, no, I would say, at least with, healthcare, and I think this would apply. There's a lot of data, and there's a lot of net new data with digitization in healthcare and, acceleration of, new models, where, there's a lot of data that we capture, and there's a lot of noise that comes out with it, so how do you stay focused? How do you stay focused more on outcomes, and leverage the data for meaningful insights versus getting drowned, right? Because we could easily get drowned in a lot of this, the information that we are collecting, staying focused on it, and then learning quickly so we fail fast, right? Because see, part of what we try to do is, we have a lot of data scientists, but majority of the work is in data engineering, right? So, and then partnering with, rather than, trying to reinvent the wheel, who are a lot of these innovative vendors, that you could, partner with, where you could buy, so you could know to put it to use and fail fast, or, scale it in a closed loop manner, so that's the key theme, don't try to, these projects in the past when we were building warehouses could take up to 18 months. Now it's all about, getting it done in, 6 weeks, and repeating that model.
Yeah.
Right. So.
So thrive with data and partner where you can and fail fast. Okay, thank you. Juan, let me make sure I ask this question to you.
Thank you.
What would you add? Yeah.
No, I mean, I think, one, you have to connect, as I said, your data strategy to your business strategy. And I know that sounds simple, but I think oftentimes, the data strategy or the agenda is 1 to 2 steps disconnected. And I think that's where, most organizations begin to challenge themselves to really be agile and flexible and aligned to where the business is really going. And so for us, that was super critical. We didn't want to define this agenda in a vacuum. And that's been, I think, our ability has really enabled us to be agile in our business using better data. The second thing I would say is it's absolutely not linear and it's not sequential. It's not about necessarily building the foundation and then sort of moving along the value chain. I think it's about taking bits and pieces across that value chain to really solve and address, whatever the business goal or objective is. And when we've done that, I think the success and the outcome has been greater. So for me, I mean, as we go through this journey, and it's a journey that never ends, right? There is no start and end, which is maybe point number 3. This is something that we're going to always continue to do. Data is not going to lose its importance. If anything, it's becoming more important. And so those would be the three maybe key takeaways that I would share with them as it relates to our journey.
Yeah, thanks. And let me kind of take an opportunity to add my kind of takeaway as well, which is the profession of data and insights in general, as practitioners internally within clients' organization or as consulting firms, it's hard. So let's not give up. The recognition is happening. So I think the golden age of data is already there. So the hard job will get harder, but the recognition is increasing. So let's not give up on this. I know we said we'll spend last 10 minutes in addressing questions. We have 5 minutes left, about 5 minutes left. But we picked up a few questions along the way. So let me go through some of the other questions. I think they're interesting ones. Maybe let me ask this to Adi. One of the question is, are data assets being recognized formally on balance sheet by CFO? So how's the valuation kind of going on, if at all?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that question. I think across the enterprise, there's broader recognition about these individual assets. But if it's an accounting treatment question, afraid I'm not really qualified to answer that.
Juan or Ashok, would you add to that?
Yes, yeah, I think part of it is data as a strategic asset or data monetization, right? So I do agree with that. I'm not sure if it is at the balance sheet level, so unless if you are a company that is, just selling data, as a business, right? Like for us, the way we look at data is how can it help our, consumers, or how can we serve our constituents well, right? So, and from that perspective, there's value, but I'm not sure if it is at the balance sheet level.
Yeah,
it's more an enabler. It's an enabler, right?
Yeah, it's being the concept is being talked about a lot, but I think it does, as you mentioned, Adi and Ashok, the accounting treatment is for things like that are different, and unless you are in the business of selling data, it doesn't really show up.
Exactly.
I think we covered cybersecurity or privacy aspects of it. Adi covered one of the questions around how to draw the line. There's one we covered about the balance as well. Juan, would you like to add anything from privacy or security perspective, given we deal with employee data as well as clients' data?
Sure, absolutely. I think for us, the data security, protection, privacy, obviously is fairly well understood and managed. I think where we're honestly, maybe more strategically thinking about this whole concept is really around data sharing, not only within the organization, but with our partners. And I think that is a topic that, everyone's sort of dealing with. I think the compliance view tells you, it's got to be black and white. There's a yes and no answer. I think what we're finding is it really comes down to what data are we talking about sharing and for what purpose? And are we, translating or, modifying that data in some way? And so I think for us, that's the, I don't know if that's the next frontier or kind of the evolution, but in regards to, the following of, the compliance policies, check, yes, we are absolutely doing that. But there's a lot of gray in regards to sharing. And that is one of our priorities, is to really develop an overall data sharing framework that gives us more of the guidelines as it relates to, what the data is, are we transforming it in any way, and how and with who are we sharing it? That is really what we're trying to solve for, because I do believe, as we're all saying, right, the increase in the importance of data internally is good, but if you start unlocking that and connecting it with kind of the broader data ecosystem, it becomes even that much more powerful.
Great, thank you. I'm being told we are out of time. So Robert, I believe that's why you're on the video now.
There were lots of additional questions. Sachin, what I'm going to do is I'm going to archive those questions. I'm going to send them to you. So that way, maybe you can carry this conversation on the LinkedIn or on further postings. So on behalf of the symposium, we would like to thank Deloitte for this presentation and this on the data harmonization. And thank you for your panels. And it's break time for attendees to get a coffee break. And we will see you back in the breakout sessions. Please remember to go to the breakout sessions as listed below at 11:30. Thank you all.
Thank you, Adi, Ashok, and Juan. Thank you.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.